One of the mantras that I really ingrain into the hiring process with my clients is short-term pain, long-term gain, because the mentality that most founders or hiring managers or executives go into the hiring process with is short-term gain. How do I get this thing off my plate? How do I get this role filled? How do we really get this off to a really chummy start and, build some rapport? And I'm saying, no, don't do it that way. Actually, if you'll put in the pain now, like meaning really filter for these people, really ask meaningful questions, really give meaningful feedback through the process, and watch and be very vigilant in the early days, in the early months, you will have long-term gain because this person will be acclimated to that level of scrutiny.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Chad Brown, who coaches entrepreneurs to get and be clear and focused in what they want. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day, to have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward. How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want, to be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Are you clear in what you want in life, and are you focused on a game you can play forever? That's our topic today, the power of clarity. And when you know your targets, it makes life and work so much easier, especially hitting your goals. We will share simple tips that you can use to move forward in your life. Chad Brown is a leadership engagement expert. He coaches founders and executives in the art and science of leadership for themselves, their teams, and clients to create new, unprecedented results and experience fulfillment in their work. Chad founded a media production studio called Shade Tree Films in 2008, serviced global companies like Volkswagen, Target, and Pixar, and then he sold that company in 2021. He thrives in extreme environments and difficult conversations, and now he helps people to do the same. Let's meet Chad and learn how. Welcome to Richer Soul, Chad Brown. It's great to have you join us today.
I'm so grateful to be here, Rocky.
And I am excited for the conversation. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Oh, my family and school taught me a lot about money, but probably not the most healthy things about money. I grew up in a small town in Utah, and my dad was a drywaller. He was a contractor, hung drywall and mudded drywall all growing up. He worked really, really, really hard, and money always seemed to be scarce. It was nowhere to be found. One of my core money memories is I was about 11 years old, and for Christmas, me and my sister, we'd been given a gift of going to Disneyland. This was huge for us. Typically, it was like a couple articles of clothing and a toy. And our parents decided they were going to take us to a 9-hour drive stay in a hotel for a couple nights, do a day at Disneyland, and then come home. And I remember we got given the gift on Christmas Day. We were supposed to leave in about 3 weeks. So we were going to go in January. And within that 3 weeks, something had happened. I don't know the details, but something had happened in my dad's business. And he came to us. Well, he talked to my mom, and my mom came to us because he didn't talk to us about money. My mom came to us and said, look, something happened in the business. We don't have the money that we thought we were going to have, and we're not going to go to Disneyland. And I was devastated, and I couldn't figure out how they let this happen, if I'm being completely honest. Like, how does this happen? How does something change so quickly? It feels like whiplash as a kid. It feels like betrayal, all of that sort of stuff. And why is this thing, money, deciding whether or not what we're going to do as a family and the memories that we're going to make? And it seemed like everybody else that I knew was going. And, so that was really, really a really fundamental moment for me in money. And then I ended up working for my dad starting at about the same age, about 12 years old. I started working for him, hauling drywall out of houses, getting all the scraps out of there. That led to me hanging drywall with him. That led to me taping drywall with him. And I did that all the way through my teenage years. And I just watched him really struggle with making money and keeping money. And I started to pick up some of the same habits, which was so interesting because I was so bummed by his management of it. And then yet I was treating it the same way. There's another time when something happened. I can't remember exactly what happened, but my dad said to me, something unfortunate on my end about money. It was maybe I was 16 and my car broke down or something like that. And he said to me, we're just unlucky. And it was in the context of the money it was going to cost to fix my car. I'd been saving, and I was going to do a trip and all of that sort of stuff. And that implanted in me deeply of like, oh, we're just unlucky. And so, there's just these moments along the way that created some deep-seated beliefs around money for me that it's been a real challenge, and I've had some struggles and some failures, a lot of failures to work to overcome in this space. And school, you mentioned school. I don't remember them ever talking about money in school, and that alone teaches me so much of that it just doesn't matter. We don't have to pay attention to it. I don't get to learn how it works, any of that sort of stuff. So I would say, from pretty early on in my life, money was a challenging topic.
So how long did that unlucky narrative stick with you?
Well, it comes and goes. I'm going to be completely honest. It's not like I just got rid of it. It still comes and goes even today. Luckily, now I have many more tools in my belt that help me take a more objective look at my beliefs and the voices inside my head. And to be able to do that is the ability to then let go of those. Even though they exist, they don't get to drive the action. So, when I was 23 years old, 23? Anyway, the year was 2007. I decided that I was going to get out of the construction industry, and I was going to get into real estate investing. So I got a partner, and we started collecting investors, and we started collecting raw property, and we would connect the investors with the raw property, and then we would do the construction using I used my dad's general license. We would do the new construction of the home on these properties. And we started breaking ground on some of those first properties early 2008. And, I don't need to narrate everything that happened, but before any of those properties were completed, because most of them were $500,000 houses, before any of them were completed, the market fell out, and we had the giant real estate crash, and the bubble popped. And, even in those moments, I remember finding myself, we personally, we were devastated financially. When at the time I was married, had 2 daughters, we went through bankruptcy at that young age. We lost our home, we lost our cars, we literally started over brand new. And even at that moment, that that narrative in my mind, we're just unlucky, was so strong and was so prominent. And I mean, luckily, I did listen to it for a little while. And that was an incredibly depressing time in my life. Felt like a loser. I felt like I couldn't support my family. I couldn't, make something happen in the world that would make me money. And stayed in that space for probably 9-10 months. And then luckily got myself back out of it and started another business.
Like, what changed at that 9-10 month mark?
You know what? It was just grit. It was just, you know what? This isn't going to work. You're not going to sit around and feel sorry for yourself. You're going to go do something again. And you're not going to, at the time, I didn't have the wherewithal to say, well, this is a belief and you don't have to believe all your beliefs. It's something we can talk about. I didn't have that. It was more so, what else are you going to do other than just go try again?
Nice. So most people don't talk about the voices in their head.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've heard, or shall I say even experienced, those voices aren't very nice.
Sometimes they're not. No, you're exactly right.
And honestly, if somebody else said those things to us, we might punch them in the face.
Yeah. Tell them to get away. Yeah.
Tell them to get away. Like, I don't want to hang out with you.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a earth-shattering moment for me the first time somebody told me, hey man, you don't have to believe everything you think.
When did that happen?
So that happened about the next business that I started was a media production company. And I started that company because I promised myself I'm never going to do anything just for money again. That was the real estate play was all about the money. I was going to, Rocky, I was going to be so rich off of all of these real estate deals. And everybody was going to think I was successful and I would be flashy and I would have the G-Wagon and the big house and the boats and all of it. I had the vision board. I had all of it set out. And I realized that the reason I went and did all that stuff is because I wanted to look successful. I wanted the money. No, I actually didn't want the money. I didn't care about the money. I wanted what the money was going to make me look like. And so I promised myself at that point, that's not the goal. That's not the aim. It can't be. And so at that point, I remembered in high school how much I loved filmmaking. And I was part of the filmmaking club and we had done a bunch of projects. It was so fun, but I had never thought about it. People saw my passion for it, but they never pulled me inside and said, hey, look, you could actually really do this. Like this could be something for you. And so it just always existed for me as like a way not to spend time in math class. I could spend time telling stories with a video camera instead of doing math. And so I remembered that and I said, what the hell? I have nothing to lose. That's kind of the beauty of losing everything is that you have nothing to lose. I think that's another thing that turned that around for me is like, you can try because you already lost everything. Might as well go, your ego included. So I started picking up a camera again and I started asking anybody and everybody if I could film something for them, tell a story about them, whether that was weddings or businesses or anything. And I started to catch on. Turns out I'm a pretty good visual storyteller. Understand it intuitively and with a little bit of polishing, I could be real effective at it and decided to move to Southern California and start a company around it.
How'd that go?
Really well. Well in ways, not well in other ways. As I say in most conversations, everything I help business owners do, I learned from failure. So I've been there in a lot of different ways. This business, man, we hit the market and the timing very, very well. The access to equipment, good, like equipment, the access came way down. Good visual equipment that you could buy for not very much. You could storytell with them. Big brands were starting to hire small studios because we could do it for a fraction of the cost and it would look just as good and the storytelling would be even better. And so we took off. We very quickly acquired clients like Target, Pixar Animation Studios, Pacific Life Insurance, and we were we were flying high really, really fast. Needed to build a team from that. So we created a studio, brought in some editors, brought in some cinematographers and some production people, brought in a front office girl. And it was growing so fast. I was traveling more than 300 days out of the year. And I let it completely take over. The success, the thrill of another big client, the thrill of another successful production. And I forgot my family. And I forgot myself, and I forgot my hobbies, and I forgot everything went on hold. And at the time, remember, my wife, we had 2 little girls, and we had moved out to California, no community, nothing to grasp onto. So they're in a small apartment in Southern California, and she's basically a single mom. And I'm globe-trotting the world, speaking from stages, working on productions, and you know, all the while I'm telling them and myself that I was doing it for them. And it took a coach to come in and show me that actually I was playing the same game in this business that I had played in the real estate business, which was an ego game. I was in it for the ego. I was in it for the fame, the attention, the people wanting me. This time, it just so happened that I was successful at it. And so that's when I really started to learn. I mean, I talk with leadership. I talk leadership with most of my clients. I'm leadership engagement specialist is what I call myself. I work with them on how they work with people to get something meaningful done and reach an aim or a goal. And I was the worst leader of people. Our turnover was high. Our people were unhappy, overworked, burnt out. I mean, in every aspect, I was just a poor leader. And it was just like, it was all coming to a head again. However, this time I was successful financially and industry-wise and business-wise, and I was losing the most important things to me.
And I'm assuming that's your wife and kids.
Yeah. My wife, my kids, friends, community. Yeah.
What prompted you to hire the coach?
That's a good question. I had a business partner in this film production studio, and we had a couple of things happen. One of them was we were on a turnover between 2 productions. So what this looked like is that we were going to fly home, go to the studio, repack and refresh all of our gear, go right back to the airport, and be on another 1.5 week long production. When I got to the studio, the team started refreshing the gear. I jumped onto the computer to do a few clerical things, check the bank account, pay some bills, all that sort of stuff. And at that point, jumped on, realized somebody had fraudulently used our company credit card and drained a lot of money from it. And that's not a problem. It's FDIC. It's like, whatever, we can recover it pretty simply, just a couple phone calls, whatever. But it was that moment that showed me, hey man, all of this can go away in a moment. But the people who love you and the people who care about you, if they go away, you can't ever get that back. And so I just went to him and I said, look, man, this isn't working. We are killing ourselves doing this. And he luckily agreed. We had never talked about it up to that point, about how it wasn't working. And he agreed. And we said, all right, 6 months. Because I'm a guy, like, I've always been a guy that just like, I don't talk about stuff. I just do it. And so it occurred to me as like, I'm not just going to talk about how this isn't working. I'm either going to figure out how to make it work or I'm done. And he was in. So we said 6 months, that's it. If we don't get this thing figured out in 6 months, we'll walk away. We'll close the doors. We'll walk away. I'll go get a job, whatever, something that can help me reconnect with my family. And so we put that out to our network because we had some really close partnerships and we didn't want it to be a surprise to anybody. And one of our partnerships that really cared about us, they were a branding agency. One of their founders said, hey, I know this guy. His name's Adrian Kaler. You might want to talk to him. And in 2011, I took my first call with Adrian Kaler, who you've had on the podcast.
I was going to say, past guest.
Yeah, I had my first call with him, and he essentially called me a liar. And then that moment broke open every possibility for me.
In what way?
Well, on that call, I'm explaining to him all my complaints, right? All the things that aren't going right about this business that's taking off, and I don't have a handle on it. And we got this turnover, and I'm never seeing my family. And I said, but I'm a family man. And he said, no, you're not. Stop lying to yourself. And I said, what do you mean lying to myself? I'm not lying to myself. I care and I love about my family. He said, if you weren't lying to yourself, your results would be different. If you were a family man, if it was the most important thing to you, you would figure out how to grow this business and be with your family in a meaningful way. So it's not a problem. He had no judgment about it. He's just like, just stop lying to yourself. Once you stop lying to yourself, now you're back to square one. You can create something new. And that broke open every bit of opportunity for me and possibility that this could both be successful and I could have the family life that I wanted.
It's funny because I'm in the midst of creating some content for our business. And the underlying premise of it is, and this is what I see with all these business owners, they all create businesses that are hard, where you have to work a lot and make a little. And I'm like, why do you people keep doing this? Why don't you create a business that's easy, that makes a lot of money, that doesn't require you to struggle? Because I believe it's possible and it's doable, and yet people don't seem to believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of factors, Rocky, that people don't consider because many of them are subconscious. And this is when this is when the invitation for us to become familiar with our inner dialogue becomes really, really powerful. Because someone may say they want a successful business. There's a million other things they could actually want that successful business gets them, right? And it can be, so many of my clients relate busyness to success. Like, as long as I'm actively doing something, as long as I'm engaged, and as long as it's hard, and as long as my calendar is full, I hear this all the time. It is very, very common. They equate a full calendar and working many hours, even though they complain about it. They say that is success. Because look at all these people that want a piece of my time. Look at all these problems I have to solve on a daily basis. Look how important I am to this. Part of what I do with founders, especially small business owners, is I work to get them unimportant to their business.
Businesses where the owner is not integral to the business are worth a lot more money than ones where the business owner is the blockade to the business.
They're worth a lot more sanity too, by the way.
Well, they're a lot more fun. And you get to enjoy life, and you get to have fun and be with your family and go to Disneyland and do the things that you started the business to do and enjoy. And, it's funny because I think the same thing's true even as an employee. I had this weird habit when I was an employee. If somebody else wanted to do my work, I handed it to them. Mm-hmm. I had no problem with that. I'm like, y'all want to do this stuff? Here you go. I'm going to go chill. Have at it. Work some more. So how are you able to break through to all the voices in your head, to change your mindsets, to make that become a reality?
Yeah. So, working with a coach was 1000% integral. It was an opportunity to have a mirror, because those beliefs, those blind spots, the inner dialogue mostly hangs out in blind spots. mostly hangs out in spots that we're not looking at. And to have somebody who's there, who's committed to what you say you're committed to, even if they have to deliver some bad news, is absolutely life-changing. Somebody who will look you in the eye and say, look, man, you're lying to yourself. It's not a problem that you're lying to yourself, but if you want something new, you're going to have to stop it. To have somebody in your corner like that is unbelievable. And then it's a matter of reps. I call it the gym of the mind. It's how often am I willing to go in there and lift those beliefs and take a look at them and look at them from this angle and look at them from that angle and ask myself if they're valuable, if they're useful, if they work towards what I say I want. And then I'll get all clear on them, and then I'll go and I'll mess it up again. So then I'm back in the gym, look at the belief again. And it's that repetitive, those reps, that willingness, that openness, that ability to ask myself, is this true? And if it's not, would I want to know? And if that question alone can unlock so many conversations within yourself and with somebody else who's committed to your growth, that will make a huge difference.
Yeah, one of our sayings is, we'll tell you the truth even if you fire us.
That's so great.
You better want to know the truth. Otherwise,
Yes.
we're not the best people to work with you.
Right on.
Is that your one actionable question, or is that something different?
No, the one actionable question is a fun thing that I use with my clients, where they actually develop their own one actionable question as it relates to their aim or their goal. It's based off of the 2000 British rowing team. We just wrapped up the Olympics here for 2024 Summer Olympics. This was 2000 Sydney Olympics. The British rowing team, 4 men. They've never been considered for a medal since something like 106 years prior or something like that. I mean, something ridiculous. Their program was a laughing stock of the rowing discipline. And these 4 men said, we're going gold. We are going gold, no matter what. And what they did is they developed one actionable question. And the question was, does it make the boat go faster? Does it make the boat? So every time from now, while we're training for the Olympics, every time from now until the Olympics, when we're ever faced with a decision, we're going to ask ourselves this one actionable question. Should we go out to the bar tonight? Does it make the boat go faster? Should I up my protein to this? Does it make the boat go faster? Should we train this many hours? Does it make the boat go faster? And every decision is based on that one question that leads them to the commitment to the aim that they say they're going for. And it clarifies and simplifies a whole lot of minutia.
You know, I tell people, when you have a target, which essentially they had, figuring out how to get there becomes a whole lot easier.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
when you don't have a target and you're not clear on what you want, you go in circles and you get distracted by shiny objects
That's
left
right.
and right.
That's
And
right.
they prevent you from where you actually want to go. And having that clarity, being crystal clear on it, and also making sure you're going to the right goal. You know, for me, I have no desire to win a gold medal in something. It's just not for me, and that's okay. If I'm going to put so much time and effort into something, I want it to be a game that continues to improve. In other words, I don't think I can keep winning the Olympic gold medal at whatever, right? It might be a one time and done.
Yeah.
It's not a lifetime of growth.
Right.
And so to me, that knocks me out. I would rather pick things that are, that at 85, I can still be working towards it and continuing. Because then I look at Warren Buffett, right? Warren he didn't even have his first billion until he was in his 50s. Right now he's got, I don't know, untold billions. But that's the power of compounding. And so pick the path that's going to take you a direction that you get to infinitely compound until you're done, so to speak.
Yeah. There's a visual I use around this, which is right now I'm shooting bows with my son. We got a couple bows and we set up the target in the backyard and We, put the bow up, knock the arrow, take aim, shoot towards the target. And the result tells us where we land according to the target that we're shooting at, right? There's no mistake whether you hit it or not. Now, what I see is so many business owners, so many founders who knock the arrow, shoot it in a direction, and then draw a target around it. And this is when you talk about distraction, when you talk about you don't know where we're aiming at, this is what it can look like. Sure, you might do some really cool things. This is what I did with my media production company. It's like we would shoot the arrow and then we'd go draw a target around it and go, look what we did. This was amazing. But then I had a life that I despised, that was full of despair because I didn't draw the target first and then shoot towards it. And that was the biggest difference, Rocky, in my experience pre-coach and post-coach, was that then I was drawing the target first and shooting at it. And it was so much more gratifying and so much more effective for what I wanted in life to do it that way rather than the other way.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. I've never heard it explained like that, but that makes total sense that they're putting the target where they shot, essentially.
Yeah.
And they're not actually thinking about it at all, or they're letting someone else pick the target.
That's right.
Which is what I think a lot of times happens. Somebody else decides for you what you want instead of you deciding for yourself.
Yeah. Well, the relatable experience around this is I can't tell you how many times I sit down with a business owner, we're talking about working together, and they say, I don't know, this thing just controls my life. Like it dictates my life. I mean, if it needs something, if there's a fire, I go to that fire. If it, that sort of thing. And that is exactly the experience of this drawing or shooting the arrow, drawing the target.
I don't know where my book is. Let Your Business Burn. My buddy Scott wrote it. He was on the podcast too, way back when.
It's hard to keep track of them all when you got 400 episodes, my friend.
It is hard to keep track of them all. But Scott, his thing was you got to let your business burn.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't stop becoming the firefighter, you're never going to solve that problem. And, what's the worst that happens? In the meantime, you got to go build your systems, processes, define what you want, where are you going, what's your target, and work on that. And I can't tell you how many of my business owners struggle with that too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's the constant thing. I don't have time to build the systems. I don't have time to build a checklist. I don't have time to train. I'm like, when are we going to stop? And sometimes it takes them 18 months to get it.
Yeah.
Have you found a way to get it faster, or are you just more blunt than me, or?
I don't, maybe. One of the things my clients aren't allowed to say to me is I don't have the time. I'm not interested in that conversation. If that's the conversation that you're in, then I should rephrase. I am interested in that conversation, but I'm interested in how quickly you're willing to get off that conversation. Because you're in the business, if you own a business and you want to grow it, you are in the business of multiplying time. That's what you do. That's what you're in charge of, is how do I take time and multiply it amongst people, resources, systems, automations, all of that sort of stuff. Like, that's your focus. And if you can do that and support your people in that way, then your business will grow and you do it intentionally with meaning, and it ends up being a great place to be. Otherwise, you're an ambulance chaser.
Do you have a question to help them get unstuck from that?
Sure. Yeah. The question is, which is one I use all the time, if it weren't the way you think it is, would you want to know? So if it's a opening question, or it's like a possibility opening question, right? So it's like the reason they're experiencing a shortness of time is because they've made up that each thing has to be done the way they're currently doing it. Otherwise, they would do something different. So the first thing I'm checking in on is, are you even open to the idea that there might be another or a million other ways to get this thing done other than the way that you're doing it? And if they're open, we got a ball game. Now we'll put some restraints on it, because creativity comes from restraints. So we'll put some restraints on it, or we'll at least acknowledge the restraints, because most business owners aren't acknowledging the restraints that exist. They're usually fighting made up restraints. So we'll get clear on the restraints, and then the creativity for a solve goes way up. And I'll even exaggerate the restraints, because there's been study after study that shows when the restraint gets greater, if you look at it as an if restraint rather than a no restraint, you look at it as an if restraint, then your creativity goes up. And so that's a series of questions that anybody can ask themselves when they're finding something that's in the way. And I put it in quotes. I know maybe a lot of people don't see the video of this, but the thing is the thing that is in the way is the way.
I didn't have Ryan Holiday on. I'll just have you know, the obstacle is the way, right?
Right.
That is the entire book.
That's right.
That is where you got to go through.
That's right. A journey without resistance is boredom.
You know, and the way I've heard that explained to me is, if you were playing a sports game and you were constantly crushing the opponent, how long till you no longer have fun? Right? Where it's just like the game no longer becomes worth playing.
Yeah.
And yet, on the other side of that, when we have to struggle in that game, that inner voice comes out.
That's right. Yeah.
We have to fight it.
Yeah. That's when the doubt comes. That's when, and all of that's just part of it, part of the game.
Have you found other ways to help you reprogram those doubts and that inner voice?
There's been so many ways. I mean, you even mentioned earlier, before we started recording, psychedelics. That's been a tool that I've been able to use mostly on a microdosing basis. Psilocybin's been a huge opportunity for me to reprogram, or at least be willing to be aware of the voices that try to distract me. It has a very interesting way of showing you the places that you get in your own way. And, or it has for me. It's shown me the places that I get in my own. I still have to do the work. It's not a fix.
No.
I still need to go do the work, but that's been an incredible tool. That's more of an exogenous tool that becomes an internal work. Surrounding myself by people who expect the best of me is another really big tool. I found myself in moments when I wasn't committed to growth, that I was spending most of my time with people who were just fine the way I am, and they're just fine, just, doing whatever, the same old thing every Friday night, and I'm talking in business, and I'm talking in regular life. But when I'm with people, I was telling you earlier, I talked about Adrian a little bit early in the conversation. We've now become really good friends and partners in this coaching adventure. And I keep him in my life outside of business because he expects the best of me. And we do these yearly trips. He and I have a son the same age. We both have sons the same age. We do these yearly camping trips. I want my boy to spend time with him because he expects the best of my boy. And that's been such a gift to me. And sometimes it's really challenging, right? Sometimes I'm just like, hey, chill out, man, relax. But when I really think about it, I'm like, no, this is making me a better human being. because I want to get up to it. I want to be the what he sees as available for me. So that's a few things.
And I think, surrounding yourself with the right people is extremely important, right? They pull you down. They prevent you from the success you want. And especially as business owners, I've noticed a lot of business owners don't always have that business circle.
Yeah.
Right. And their spouses they don't understand.
That's
their
right.
family doesn't understand. They all look at them like, why'd you go into business? Why didn't you take the safe path? Why didn't you do it this way? And so if you haven't built that business circle with people that you can be honest with, it's difficult to get the feedback that you need.
Yeah.
And that's been a big part of what I do. I lead a business circle, and then actually I lead two. One is actually in my industry. So people who do what I do, and we just trade ideas of how to improve. The other one's more general business guys and just much more work-life integration in that group. We're not just about the business, because there's the whole life side of it that I think too often business groups forget about the life side of it.
Yeah.
Right. They're all like chest bumping, like 7-figure, 8-figure club and 7th wife and 3rd heart attack. And like, thank you, but no thank you. And it's not worth it.
Yeah. Those conversations are some of the most meaningful conversations for me. I also run a business development group. It's called Founders League. It's for small business owners who are running small teams and looking for growth and scale. And we meet once a week, and it's really powerful when we come together, share the experience, and call each other into something greater. I mean, there's not a week that goes by where somebody says something in the group about their business and it shows up like a limitation. And somebody else in the group says, "Is that true? Are you sure that's true?" And just that alone, having a group of people who are willing to do that for you and with you, it can change everything.
It can. And honestly, that's the biggest thing in my life that I always struggled to find, was people who were willing to tell me the truth.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Or to call me out. Or when I asked for feedback, "Oh, everything looks wonderful." I'm like, really? Interesting. Because I don't feel that way. And I don't know why it's so hard to get good feedback. Are people just afraid to tell you, or is it something else?
I've found it to be something else, and I'm not going to pretend like I know this to be true, but I am going to say from my own personal experience, this is true. When I'm unwilling to be honest with somebody, when I'm unwilling to give the feedback, it's that I'm afraid of the way that I'm going to look when I give it. I'm afraid of what they're going to think of me if I am that one who says, "I don't know, man, it seems like you could do better than this." Or, "This didn't really make sense for me," or, "It didn't work for me when you said this to me." That to be that guy, you take the risk of it not being received well. And so I think most people talk themselves out of giving that kind of feedback because they're scared of the way that they're going to look to that person. And ultimately, it results in us not having the impact with each other that we could because we chicken out. And we're not willing to take that risk, to risk the idea that you have to be willing to risk the thing you want the most in order to gain it. I love that saying. It's a really complex and paradoxical idea for people. Like, it's hard to get our head around, but ultimately, if you really want that connection with people, if you really want to make a difference for others, you have to actually be willing to risk the relationship by saying things that might damage it, not in a rude way, not being a jerk, but to be truthful and to be honest. And some people don't want to hear truth and honesty.
No, they don't. And actually, going through my notes, one of the things you talk about is 2 types of trust.
Mm-hmm.
One that's devastating and one that kind of accelerates a team. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah. You talked about it a little bit at the beginning of our call before we hit record. It had a little bit of a breakdown, and you mentioned trust and verify. Now that's the most common vernacular around this idea in business. I use some different language around it. So I talk about two types of trust. The first type of trust is called blind trust. And this is what most people in our society, especially Western culture, think is noble. So what this looks like is, hey, Rocky, I trust you so much that I don't have to pay attention to you. I trust you so much that I know you're going to do what you say you're going to do, so I can just go do my own thing and know that you have it taken care of. This is what I call blind trust. This is devastating to teams for lots of reasons. One of those reasons being, Jordan Peterson puts this absolutely beautiful. He says, we all have snakes in us, meaning we all have the ability and do from time to time betray each other and betray our own word. It's not always malicious. I think it's actually rare that it's malicious. Sometimes it's a result of circumstances. Sometimes it's a result of prioritization, but it's not communicated that way. There's lots of ways that I could betray you, Rocky. Like if you say, hey, Chad, let's meet at the movies at this time on Saturday night. And I say, okay, you got it, man. Let's go. I'm really excited to see you and see this movie. And then I don't show up. Or I show up 20 minutes late without ever saying anything. Now, there's a million things going on in my life that I allowed to get in the way of keeping my commitment with you. But that's a betrayal. I betrayed my word to you. Now, blind trust would say, I trust you so much that I'm not going to check in with you. I don't need to pay attention. I don't need to see signs of possible miss or any of that sort of stuff, because man, look how great I am and look how great you are and look how great our relationship is, because I just know you're going to come through. And then that ends up resulting in a lot of breakdowns on a team. It just does. I see it over and over again. The second type of trust is mature trust. This is what others would call trust and verify. But I call it mature trust, meaning I trust you, Rocky, knowing that at any moment you could betray me. Not like a skeptic, not like I'm looking and waiting for you to betray me, but actually I'm so committed to our success together that I want to identify anything early on that could get in the way of our success together. And that's what I'm paying attention to. It's like you and me shoulder to shoulder, and we're looking for the enemy and where it's going to show up, rather than me looking head to head with you going, I don't know if you're going to do this, man. Can you do this? You don't seem like you're going to do it. That's not the game. So I'm shoulder to shoulder with you, and we're vigilant, and we're saying, wow, I wonder what could get in the way of us being successful together. And I'm committed to calling it out. I'm committed to bringing attention to it as soon as I see it. So I part of what I do with leadership teams is part of the job that I end up doing is exiting executives that aren't working out. And when I debrief the relationship with a founder later, I always ask the question, now looking back, when do you think the first time you noticed something like this or it going this direction? And I will get answers like, if they're really truthful and if they're really reflective, I'll get answers like, oh man, in the first week, they said this. And I was like, that doesn't seem quite in line with what we say we're going for, but it's so small and I don't want to micromanage and I don't have time for that. So I just let it go. 18 months down the road, the department's a mess because this leader didn't do what they said they were going to do. They didn't lead people well. They didn't get the results that they said that they were going to get. And we could trace that back to some very small things that were said or done right from the beginning that person, that founder, wasn't willing to interrupt.
We have a tendency to ignore red flags when they're small and just kind of let them go by. And then once you get into the relationship, it becomes hard. Well, they're doing this well and they did this okay. And actually, the conversation I had today with one of my clients about hiring is we don't hire people because we like them. We hire people because they have success at doing the job we need them to do. And you need to figure out if they can do that well, not if you both happen to like the same baseball team.
Or went to the same college.
Or went to the same college. That is not a good reason to hire somebody or to do that. And, it's funny because I know a lot of large firms only recruit from certain colleges. And I'm like, you're making yourself so insular.
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting other points of view and you're losing out considerably on talent. And it becomes the old boys club. And then you wonder why nothing gets done.
That's right.
Everyone
That's
is
right.
more invested in protecting everyone else's back than they are in actually getting the work done.
Yeah. Yes. And anybody listening to this, one of the mantras that I really ingrain into the hiring process with my clients is short-term pain, long-term gain. Short-term pain, long-term gain. Because the mentality that most founders or hiring managers or executives go into the hiring process with is short-term gain. How do I get this thing off my plate? How do I get this role filled? How do we really get this off to a really chummy start and, build some rapport? And I'm saying, no, don't do it that way. Actually, if you'll put in the pain now, like meaning really filter for these people, really ask meaningful questions, really give meaningful feedback through the process, and watch and be very vigilant in the early days, in the early months, you will have long-term gain because this person will be acclimated to that level of scrutiny. And I don't mean scrutiny in a pejorative way. I just mean we are very transparent here and we are committed to results rather than the chumminess that we might have between each other. And if you're willing to endure that short-term pain, man, it's going to pay off for long-term.
That it will. And I know they're coming out now with tools for hiring that are actually, I don't know how they're doing it exactly. If it's AI driven, part of it is personality tests, part of it is certain types of things. But one of my clients showed me their hiring dashboard that was provided by another company. And it tells you about the person. It's like, this person has anger issues. I'm like, I wonder how they figured that out. Or it's got, it starts to say that what it's really saying is their experience is not congruent with what the resume says.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start to see that there's these mismatches across the board, and also making sure that their innate behaviors are in line with the position. So, some people run into a fire, some people run out of the fire. And depending on what the job is, you need both, but you need to match that. And I don't think we do enough of looking at the personality tests or doing those types of things to see if it's a good fit, and asking the right questions to determine that. Because at the end of the day, what I've noticed is some people are really good at interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are really good at getting the job done, but they just might not be good at interviewing.
Yeah.
And you've got to figure out how to get through that system.
Yeah. One thing that I talk a lot about is sometimes it's over before it starts. Meaning we put so much attention for hiring managers, executives, or founders. We put so much attention to find the right person that fits the role. But you know what? Most of those hiring managers, most of those founders aren't clear on what they're looking for. And if you're not clear on what you're looking for, you can never find the right fit. And again, we've hit it a couple of times. I work with so many people who say, oh, I just don't have the time to write that job description. I just don't have the time to do 3 or 4 interactions with this person before I hire them. And I said, or whatever their excuse is. Sometimes it's time. Sometimes they think they're just really clairvoyant and they can fix, they can just like see the right person when they see them. But I would say the very first step that most people ignore is getting crystal clear on who you're looking for.
It comes down to it. Creating clarity. Whatever it is that you want, being very clear.
Yeah.
Because once you're clear, it becomes easy to be able to achieve what you want.
Yeah, it's quite wild how the world starts to organize itself around your clarity.
It is. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Practice. Practice, practice, practice. When scarcity creeps in, ask myself, is this true? Because I struggle with scarcity. I struggle with scarcity beliefs and ideas. They challenge me often. And if I'm not paying attention, I'll believe them. Even everything I have around me, I will actually believe them. And then once I challenge it, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got everything I need.
And then that goes back to childhood.
Yeah, that's right. Probably. Yeah.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you'd have learned sooner?
I wish I had learned that people are making the best decisions they see available. People are making the best decisions they see available. I'm not saying they make the best decision available. I'm saying they make the best decision they see available. And with that understanding, I can empathize with the decisions that people make in their lives. And there's something within them, a perspective that has driven them to believe that they thought that was the best decision they had available to them. And with that frame, I can be in conversation with anybody without judgment.
See, I assume the whole world thought the way I did and saw the world the way I did.
And how's that going for you?
Well, it's going great for me. The rest of them have trouble. That was kind of a major aha. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Go deep on something. Go deep on something. And this is, look, I know plenty of people who have been a jack of all trades for a long time and they like it. But from my perspective, I can only give advice or give encouragement from my perspective. And the one thing I wish I would have done is just stuck and gone deep with something. And I bought into the lie that there was some purpose outside of me out there that I needed to go discover. Something that was like really going to spark my juices, get my juices going, whatever. And ultimately, I think our purpose is found in commitment. When we commit to something, when we go deep on it, when we learn about it, we read books, we seek wisdom from people who have been there. When we do all of those things, that's when purpose develops. And we create it rather than this thing that we are out there finding. And I see many kids, my oldest daughter's 18. We're actually dropping her off at school tomorrow, which is just crazy for me to say. I can't even believe I'm saying those words. And this is the only piece of advice that I have given her is go deep on something, make it a purpose. And if you discover later on that you want to create another purpose, do it. But don't fall into this trap that so many are falling into now, is that I just got to hang back. I just got to try a bunch of different things. And when something doesn't go my way, I got to try something new. Embrace the challenge, go after it, go deep.
And sometimes it takes a while for something to stick. And the other thing is kind of what we alluded on earlier. go deep on something that can go infinite.
Yes. Yes. That's right.
Or that's a building block to something else. So even if you pivot, it still gives you the block to move forward and whatever else it is that you do. So definitely.
Yeah.
If people would like to learn more about you and your offerings, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way to connect to me personally is on LinkedIn. I'm there often and answer any messages that come in there. If you want to check in on what I do with founders, you can go to founder-freedom.com. It's a lot of the principles. It's my mastermind. It's a lot of the principles we've talked about today that I've discovered through my journey that's created freedom in my business rather than captivity. You can go there. Also, if you message me, you're a business owner, you want a support system, you can jump into my private mastermind for entrepreneurs where we support each other.
Awesome. And we will put some of those links into the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Rocky, thanks for having me.
What is your one actionable question that can help keep you focused and on target and prevent you from wavering? Who around you is going to tell you the truth? These two are the key to your success. If you don't have them, find them. If you do, congrats. Continue to refine them and work on them. By the way, who do you know who would appreciate this episode? Would you do me a favor and share it with them? I'd appreciate that. Next week, we've got on Scott Mounts to talk about the mentally strong leader.